Hello and welcome to the webinar. Please wait with us for just a minute while we let other people join the call. Thank you. For those of you just joining, we're going to wait one more minute before we start the webinar. Thank you. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the webinar. My name is Anna Rosenbaum and I'm Public Affairs Manager for the National Association of Regional Councils, also called NARC. NARC serves as the national voice for regionalism by advocating for regional cooperation as the most effective way to address a variety of community planning and development opportunities and issues. What makes regional planning so effective is how we convene various stakeholders and impart interjurisdictional cooperation around that common vision. NARC's member organizations are comprised of multiple local governments that work together to serve American communities, large and small, urban and rural. Now, during this webinar, if you should have any technical questions, please email my colleague, Cameron Erbelsheimer, directly. His information is on the welcome screen you see in front of you. He will also be managing the questions section that you see on the side of your screen. Please note that we have a short 5-minute video to play later in the presentation that you'll need to use your computer speakers for. So please remember to turn those up at that time. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by several experts in the fields of water, green infrastructure, and resiliency. First, we will hear from Scott Taylor, Chair of the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance, or NMSA. Scott has over 33 years of experience in flood management and surface water quality, and he's a registered professional engineer in 10 states. He works for Michael Baker International, Inc., as an ASCE fellow and a diplomat in water resources engineering. He is also chairman for the National Academy's Transportation Research Board Standing Committee on Stormwater, and previously chaired the board for the California Stormwater Quality Association. Next, we'll hear from Seth Brown, principal and founder of Storm and Stream Solutions. Seth acts as director of stormwater programs for the Water Environment Federation, where he provides support on a variety of efforts and initiatives focused on stormwater, in addition to providing support to the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance. Seth has over 20 years in the private sector and is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Maryland. He's currently a PhD candidate at George Mason University, where his research focuses on economic modeling of incentive-based investments of green stormwater infrastructure on private properties. And then we're going to hear from Mike Beasold, Senior Water Resources Planner at HDR in Kansas City. He has a Master of Science degree from Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, with an emphasis in outdoor recreation and natural resource planning. Mike has nearly 25 years of experience in the water and natural resources field, including municipal and state-level career experience as the Department of Public Works Watershed Manager for the city of Lenexa, Kansas, and as an urban watershed conservationist with the Missouri Department of Conservation in Kansas City. Mike is the recent past chair for the Water Environment Federation National Stormwater Committee and recently served on the advisory committee for WEF's new Stormwater Institute. Now, there's going to be time for questions and discussion at the end of the presentation. If you have questions during the presentation, please type it into the question box on your control panel. A video recording of the presentation and materials will be made available following the webinar. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Scott.
All right, thanks, Anna. Just wait for my slides to come up here real quick.
Sorry, we're having a slight technical difficulty. It'll just take just a second.
No problem. All right, there we go. Thanks a lot, Anna. The National Municipal Stormwater Alliance is proud to be one of the sponsors for this webinar. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to give you an overview of NMSA and our view on the importance of trees in MS4 programs. Next slide, please. So NMSA is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. A basic tenet of NMSA is to provide an unambiguous voice nationally for MS4 programs. Accordingly, our core target membership is statewide associations comprised of MS4 permittees. To date, we have 13 such organizations across the U.S. Examples include the California Stormwater Quality Association, the Minnesota City Stormwater Coalition, the Ohio Stormwater Association, Kentucky Stormwater Association, and the Indiana Association for Floodplain and Stormwater Management. You can see all of our members at our website, which is nationalstormwateralliance.org, as well as more information on NMSA there. NMSA is also affiliated with the Water Environment Federation. Next slide. Here you see our motivation for formation. As I said, NMSA was formed to provide a unified voice for stormwater programs and support the other basic principles for stormwater that you see here. Next slide. Today's webinar will give you technical support for making trees part of your program, an important part of your program. And next slide. In summary then, it's a good time to, I think, to take credit for trees for both the water quality benefits they can provide, but also to promote sustainable and resilient watersheds. We really appreciate your time in attending the webinar. I'm now going to transition to another co-sponsor, Seth Brown. He's the Director of Stormwater Programs for WEF and also the WEF liaison to NMSA, to say a few words about WEF and give the WEF perspective on trees and stormwater. Seth.
Thanks, Scott. And we're going to transition over into our slides. So let me just take this time to, oh, there we go, that was quick. So I want to talk a little bit about WEF, the Water Environment Federation, for those who are not familiar with that acronym, and especially the Stormwater Institute. And again, as Scott mentioned, we at WEF are very happy and proud to be part of this and be a co-sponsor of this. And clearly, trees and urban forestry is critical wastewater sector, and that's something we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk a little bit, very quickly, to talk about WEF, and then hand it over to Mike Beasold, who's going to talk a little bit more about an application that he was involved in. So thank you, Mike, for going forward. So you can see that I'm the Director of Stormwater Programs at the Water Environment Federation, and you can go to the next slide for me. There you go. So for WEF, WEF is just like NMSA. It's a 501c3 focused on technical and educational organization. It's been around for a long, long time, well over 90 years, and it has focused on various aspects of the water quality sector. And as our water quality challenges and the nature of these challenges have shifted over time, WEF has also shifted. So for a long time, the core mission of the Water Environment Federation has been focused on the wastewater sector, as that was a driving water quality topic for a long time. But as I think many of us on the call here understand, our water quality issues and challenges are evolving. So there has been more and more interest in looking at watershed and stormwater issues, and that's given rise to the Stormwater Institute, which I'll talk about in a second. We've got 34,000 individual members. So WEF is an individual member-driven organization. We also have, we're a federation, not an association. So we've got 40 what are called member associations that are located at the state and regional level in the U.S., and then we have others across the world. So there's WEF has an international reach focused on this. We've got 29 committees, many of them technical, and we also have a watershed committee as well as a stormwater committee. So we do cover these topics and focus on this. We have many publications, both magazines, books. We provide technical information in the form of webinars, webcasts, just like this. And we're most well known for WEFTech, which is our annual conference. It's the largest annual water conference in the world. We get over 20,000 folks to come out every year, and we've got over 7 acres of show floor as part of that. And we have a stormwater area that's focused in our showroom, as well as the Stormwater Congress, which is a focused area for our technical area. So we do cover stormwater. If you can go to the next slide, Mike, please. Really appreciate it. Yep. And one way we've furthered our focus on stormwater is by the establishment of the Stormwater Institute. WEF had been involved with stormwater in various aspects, and we decided that it would be best to form a central hub for all of the activities and products we were forming and producing behind Center. So you can see that the Stormwater Institute's the Center of Excellence and Innovation within WEF. It's a hub for all of the stuff we're working on right now. If you want to learn more, you can go to wefstormwaterinstitute.org. We do have Stormwater Institute members, and we invite anyone who's interested to go check that out and ask us if there's any questions that you have. You're seeing right now a screen capture of Rainfall the Results, which is a publication that the Stormwater Institute put out as kind of the first big product that came out, and it really provides a great pathway in the future of where we're going in stormwater. So it's an interesting read for those who are interested in this topic. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to quickly talk about a couple of initiatives that WEF is involved with that have a nexus with urban trees and forestry issues. The first is the National Green Infrastructure Certification Program. This is a program that does not certify projects, or products or anything like that. It actually certifies people. So you can think of this as a wastewater operator type of certification program, but for the green infrastructure sector. So this is just rolling out. We've been going through a pilot phase with 14 pilot communities and partner communities across the country who are interested in gaining certification for folks who do construction and inspection and maintenance of green infrastructure systems. And so this is rolling out nationally in 2018. We have well over 100 certified professionals right now, and we're getting many more as we move forward. So if you have any interest in this, you can go to ngicp.org and find out more about that. I will note here that we do have a focus in our training material associated with this program on street trees and urban forestry issues. And clearly there's a need for this. One of the challenges that we see in the sector is the street trees that are not installed properly or not readily maintained, and that adds to challenges and what we see for street tree survival and success in urban settings, especially for stormwater, and to have stormwater credit provided, as Scott talked about. It's really important that these systems are installed and maintained properly, and that's really what the NGICP is about. There's more to be said, but I want to move on to the next slide if we can. Wanted to mention that WEF is also engaged in policy and advocacy. There is something called the Water Week, which is the week of April the 17th and 18th. Those 2 days are really the heart of Water Week, but there's other things that go on that same week in mid-April. And this isn't a chance for members to come together, come to the Washington, D.C. area, and learn about updates in regulation and legislation that are tied to various sectors. We cover, and we work with other organizations to talk about drinking water as well as wastewater, but we also have a focus on stormwater. So the Stormwater Institute will hold a stormwater session as well for members to come together. And then we will go to the Hill and advocate for specific issues related to stormwater. And again, tying with things like the Farm Bill and other types of programs and support for these programs that also are tied to things, groups like the U.S. Forest Service and others that have a tie to urban forestry issues. Next slide, please. The last initiative I want to talk about and mention is that WEF and the Stormwater Institute are part of the Sustainable Urban Forestry Coalition. And this is a group that's been around for a number of years, focusing again on promoting urban forestry as a practice. And there are a handful of water organizations, and WEF is one of those. So we bring the flavor of stormwater and stormwater treatment into this discussion as we promote sustainable urban forestry through policy and advocacy engagement. So with that, I want to turn this over to Mike Beazold, and you've already heard a bio on Mike. I will just add to that a little bit that Mike has been a WEF member for a number of years. He was the first chair of the Stormwater Committee. He's a leader in this area. He's been involved with green stormwater infrastructure for many years. He was out front before many others in this area. And having Mike as part of this webinar is very, very appropriate, as he acts in the nexus between stormwater and forestry, because he's got a background in natural resources and in forestry. So with that, I'll turn this over to Mike and let him talk about what he's been working on in the Lenexa area.
Well, thank you, Seth, and I appreciate the introduction again. And it's been a pleasure working with Water Environment Federation and working with Seth in the evolution of the Water Environment Federation's work in the area of stormwater and stormwater quality. I've been at it with them since I think 2010, trying to stand things up and promote items. And one such item, and it's not reflected here, is a product that WEF put out a couple of years ago called the Green Infrastructure Implementation Guidebook. And I and many others were co-authors in that guidebook. And the guidebook is not about how to plant trees and native plants. It doesn't get into that level of detail. It really is a guidebook that's about how do you navigate local ordinances and zoning and policy. So it's kind of high-level planning. And so the case study I'm going to share with you, I used to be the stormwater manager for the Public Works Department of Lenexa, Kansas, which is in a suburb of Kansas City. There you can see it's in the northeast part of the state. Kansas City Metro is about 2 million people. There's 11 counties that participate in our local COG, if you will, Mid-America Regional Council, who's been very active and has lots of means for facilitating conversations among these 11 counties or 122 cities around the metro. trying to make sure that we do similar things for stormwater management, water quality, and certainly incorporation of trees. So just to start off here, Lenexa in the late 90s went into their first vision process. It's called Vision 2020. And statements came out of that visioning process similar to this: maintain the balance between Lenexa's natural and man-made environments. And these began to lay the groundwork for the development of the remainder of the city. The city was built out about a third of the way at that time in the metro ring. Now it's about 50,000 people and is, at the time, experiencing similar stormwater problems like most communities: flooding, stream bank erosion failure, aging infrastructure. And the question at the time was, how do we do this better in the future and respect these natural systems? And so we laid out also some strategies about maintaining open space and preservation of natural vegetation, building codes that respect the environment. And these then laid the groundwork for what would become the city's stormwater program called Rain to Recreation. And Rain to Recreation program for the city was to look at stormwater as an amenity, not a liability. And how would we go about doing that? And what we also found is that we have a triple bottom line approach in which, $1 goes to buy three things. It's provided for flood reduction, water quality and habitat, both terrestrial and aquatic, and then recreation and educational opportunities, aligning closely with our Parks and Rec program. We took a new approach at that time in the late 90s, early 2000s now. It was going to be a watershed-based approach, looking at the entirety of the system, the source of where the water was generated and carrying pollutants, and how we'd also manage flood control and those other mission points that I mentioned before. We think it would save, at the time, 25% in what was traditional stormwater infrastructure, capital costs and maintenance. And because we were looking at regional systems, watershed scale, we believe that the economies of scale would save us a significant amount of money. Not only that, by protecting some of the natural resources and utilizing them, such as the urban forests around streamways, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So we wouldn't have to be mitigating with expensive practices if we were able to preserve more of the natural system. And this is just another look at it, but what I wanted to now do quickly is take you from our experience with our regional retention systems up through our stream setback ordinances, how we use transfer development rights, and then how some of the new development standards look on the ground. And you'll see native plants and trees both preserved and added throughout the presentation. This is Lenexa. It's a long linear city. It's on I-35, comes up from Texas through Kansas City and north. And right in the middle of the city is one of the most visited, well, it is the most visited park in the state, and that's Shawnee Mission Lake Park, run by the county. And so it is quite an amenity for the city, and we're all about preserving the water quality of that. The two projects that I want to talk about, one is our new city center, new urbanist development there in the center, and its watershed flows into Shawnee Mission Lake. So I want to show you what we're doing there to help support the water quality, and then also look at Lake Lenexa, which is our flagship project of regional retention, construction of water quality features, and other elements in the city. So Lake Lenexa was again our flagship project. It got off the ground in early 2000s as part of the Rain to Rec program, and there were 80 acres of park right there where the lake sets. You can see in the dark shaded green in the middle there. And then we built around that by using the stormwater utility and a sales tax that later sunset to purchase the remainder of the property, which is around 300 acres. We had lots of public meetings. We talked about the different vision statements that everything tied to. And so it wasn't just a lake, but an amenity. It was to have parks and trails, passive and active recreation, tying in wetlands upstream of it. So we're cleaning the water as it comes down from future areas of development, protecting the streamways and some of the upland forests that were out there as it was urbanizing. And I oriented this picture of the lake, what it looks like under construction. The dam was finished there. So it's not an ordinary dam and spillway structure. It very much is an artistic expression of how we look at water quality in this big flagship project. But you'll notice around it how it also sets in the all these preserved oak hickory forests that surround it. So one of the things that we did from a planning perspective is we looked at our future land use plans, the comprehensive plan. We arrived at several of these large facilities that we'd be creating. And I say large, this is a 35-acre surface area lake with 300 acres of park. So it's some areas of the country, it might be a pond, but it's a fairly significant size lake for our city. So in the comp planning process, we arrived at something called zones of influence. And each of these facilities would be surrounded by several zones. One is first closest to the lake is a habitat zone for connectivity purposes up and down the streamway corridor and around our lakes and facilities. The other one is a water quality zone, and these are all literature-based findings of zone widths. And this is, protecting water quality directly adjacent to the lake. And then beyond that, because we're investing so much money here, we're investing $20 million or better, we wanted to make sure that it remained as public as possible. So we also looked further at the view shed of what we would consider to make this a public feel for a park, in particular our flagship park. And it just so happened that in the lower right, the Arbor Day Foundation was given some property adjacent to the park as well. So we were in close cooperation with Arbor Day Foundation out of Nebraska City, Nebraska. And we did a number of exercises. We took platted properties. We looked across the lake in the very upper part of this. There was going to be a future development site. And then we rendered what the view shed would look like and how that would make it feel not as public. And so that project came and went, and it didn't fit within our zones of influence. And these zones were codified in the future land use and code about how they would be applied around the city. One of the main connectors and really main pieces of the system is our stream networks. We modeled the future floodplain, not the FEMA floodplain that a lot of people talk about, the existing, but the future floodplain based on future land uses. And we built those into our stream setbacks. We also looked at water quality issues and the current condition of those streamways and rated them. And so we had variable buffer widths to our streams, inner, middle, and outer zone, and there were different activities that are allowed in each. But what we knew first and foremost is it would account for future flooding from residential and commercial development out in this part of the city for all future generations. So we wouldn't be worrying like we did in the eastern part of the city about flooding occurring along our streamways or stream banks eroding and then having infrastructure compromised as a result of that. And this is how the stream setbacks look against the different land uses. Again, these were codified into the comp plan. I am still a resident of Lenexa, and I get to see these things in action and walk the trails every day. And it has been almost as if you look at the city as a city in a park, and rather than these non-connected parks within a city. So it's a pretty amazing program and how it was approached from the ground floor. And many of the streams in Lenexa, we are in Kansas, most would suspect they're prairie, but actually they're forested stream corridors primarily in northeast Kansas. And so we maintain them that way, and we improve them accordingly. And this is how it would look if you were a developer coming into the city and you wanted to plat some land. You know, these are the areas that you would have to stay out of based on the quality and the floodplains that were modeled for these different watersheds. So again, for that ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that certainly is the case, because it's millions of dollars to improve stream banks and stabilize and build, you know, $20 million retention lakes like Lake Lenexa. So if we can avoid much of that, this went a long way. We also found that there was no takings issues from future land use of property owners, since they voluntarily buy into the city's development plan, and so legally it wasn't ever challenged. So that's a really important tool that's out there. And just quickly here, I want to show you how this looks at city center. It's right in the middle of the city, as I showed you in the original image. It's upstream of Shawnee Mission Park, which we were very much about wanting to protect. And new urbanism, the term at the time, was very popular about walkability. And so then it became a question of, well, how do we also include green infrastructure? And so we had our own set of development standards for city center. And this is just showing you some of the more higher urbanized types of best management practices to deal with water quality. Planter boxes that are part of the architecture are some of those. You'll see some bump outs and curbs using rain gardens in the upper right, little curb inlets that pop into them. And then how do we better utilize our tree infrastructure and look to support our parks departments in not having to come in and every 3 to 7 years cut the trees down because of the heat island or drought or disease. How do we offer more rooting space for a more mature tree to do the functions that it can do, and the multiple benefits beyond just water quality and stormwater? James Urban has been very big in this area about understanding how much rooting space is really needed. And today you might find along the curb a 4x4 box with a grate, which and it might be 4 feet deep. So we're not talking about a lot of space. And what Mr. Urban was showing us is, you know, somewhere closer to 1,000 cubic feet of rooting space would be appropriate. And since that time, there's been lots of different products that come out to help support sidewalks and amenity zones out in front of some of these beautiful stores to allow seating areas and things that you can either cantilever your sidewalks on or put them on with different compaction rates to be able to provide these trees with that rooting space. Not only providing the interception of the crown of the tree as the rain's falling, but then the uptake through evapotranspiration in a much larger tree and a much bigger rooting zone. So we've come to learn it takes more to grow a healthy tree than just put it in the ground and then build sidewalks on top of it. At City Center, we did have to work with some water quality needs on a more regional scale. There's certainly a lot of runoff, and we want to treat it as much as we can at the source, at the upper part of the watershed. And this was an opportunity we took with the American Recovery Program. It's got a green space on the lower left, flowing to the north through several pools that are recirculated down at the bottom from an extended detention or wetland. And then to the very upper part of it, there's a couple of bioretention cells. They're like large rain gardens, but more highly designed with under drain systems, and they're very much manicured. A lot of this has native plantings on it. And so it's all about recirculating the water, cleaning it before it goes down to Shawnee Mission Lake. And these are some of the renderings that we used with the public at the time we were conceiving this idea. Subsequent, so if you go up to the street that's at the very lower left of this photo, the street has these large bump outs now that have tree planters for water quality purposes. So you can see how the water comes off the street by the car through the opening and into the cell, and it's giving much more rooting space, and in this case it's bald cypress, and they like to have wet feet. So we have to be specific about the species we put there. There's the central green looking into city center, and it's much more grown now in terms of buildings, and City Hall is now there and a community center. These are the recirculating pools and, you know, engaging people to be active and around the water, down to the extended detention wetland area. And you'll see all kinds of native grasses and flowers and trees being planted. Interestingly enough, we used another tool called Sustainable Sites Initiative, SSI, to help us plan the site out, and we retain quite a bit of the natural trees to the left of that wetland as part of the overall system. And then similarly, we went downstream and we had a little corridor that was behind homes, and we went in there and restored that corridor with trees, and making sure we looked at those stream bank cuts on the lower left, put in different interventions to move the water, stabilize, and also add trees and native vegetation through there. And so today, this is what it looks like. You know, the neighborhood has a small park by them, a pocket park, if you will, a lot of native plants. And then you don't see much of this anymore, but kids down in the creek actually getting wet and enjoying it, and not behind a computer screen. All that said, it's a great program. The Arbor Day Foundation gave it an award, and we've been a Tree City USA participant recognition for several decades now. So with that, I will turn it back to Cameron.
All right, thank you, Mike. Now we're going to hear from David Rudder, Senior Environmental Planner for the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments. That's the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Greater Cincinnati region. David will give you an introduction to the Trees and Stormwater Partnership, the website, and document builder. David holds a BA in History from Ohio Wesleyan University and an MA in Adult Education and Environmental Education from The Ohio State University. David's plethora of work has been presented at the National Partners in Smart Growth Conference, the Ohio Watershed Leaders Conference, and the 2017 International Conference on Ecology and Transportation, supported by the Federal Highway Administration. With that, I'm going to turn it over to David. Take it away.
Thank you, Anna. I'm really pleased to be here today to share with you a new tool that's available that's focused on trees as a component of stormwater management systems. So by way of introduction, OKI is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, for the Greater Cincinnati Tri-State region. And our region consists of just under 200 local government jurisdictions, ranging from urban to rural to suburban. And we work to provide resources and tools to all of them. Now, as our agency continually works in partnership with those local jurisdictions to address regional planning issues, stormwater management has more and more become part of the focus and part of the conversation. And like most, if not all of the regions across the country, we're faced with the need to reinvest in old infrastructure systems at great cost. And as we plan for this investment, green infrastructure solutions are at the forefront of consideration. But these solutions must be practical and they must be reliable as we invest in systems that need to last for generations. So our region, we maintain a strategic regional policy plan that we've branded, How Do We Grow From Here? And this plan helps us to have a comprehensive approach to infrastructure system planning. And in that plan, we recognize that the trees in our tree canopy is an asset with many benefits, including stormwater. So we began doing our own research on how trees can assist in stormwater management a few years ago to see what information was available, and there's a lot. We determined we needed to get this information to the decision makers in our communities, and the evidence was clear that trees are a viable stormwater management strategy based on over a decade of academic research and community application. Trees reduce the peak flow of stormwater runoff from urbanized areas, and trees also filter out pollutants and sediment before the runoff enters streams. So with support from the U.S. Forest Service, OKI teamed with the national partners that are listed here to develop this guide, which is designed for local decision makers. So Jenny Gulick with Davie Resources Group, who you're going to hear from in a few minutes, provided expertise to ensure that the guide included practical information applicable to any type and size community. And Davie provided the case study examples that you're going to be able to explore in the guide that are applicable to your own situation. Larry Wiseman with Centerline Strategy, who's founding president and former CEO of the American Forest Foundation, worked to ensure that all of the information contained in the guide is easily accessible to you and in a way that quickly gets you to the resources that are most helpful to your situation. National Association of Regional Councils helped to engage their membership in regions across the country to ensure the guide is applicable nationally. And NARC also assisted with the website design, and they're going to be the ones that are maintaining the guide going forward into the future so that it's available as you explore in your own communities how to incorporate trees. So in addition, the guide was developed with input and guidance from experts across the country. We used a national advisory committee in tandem with a regional project advisory committee. The regional committee gave us practical solutions for local governments, while the national committee served to ensure that the tool had that national applicability, that it was applicable across the different types of communities and climate areas of the country. The resources of the guide, we vetted those through focus group consultations with community engineers, urban foresters, and stormwater managers. And we found that in order to engage so many people in so many places, we really had to utilize technology. So we used webcasts, online surveys, in addition to in-person workshops to get input throughout the development of the resource. We also give a thanks to the Arbor Day Foundation, who allowed us extra time at their Partners in Community Forestry National Conference last fall in Indianapolis to share preliminary versions of the tool and get input on how to maximize its value to all users. So this tool and its resources provide evidence that integrating trees into stormwater management works. Although the focus is on stormwater benefits, the guide doesn't ignore all the other benefits that trees provide a community, and it devotes special attention to resources demonstrating the multiple levels of investment returns. So we heard from experts over and over that case studies, they're really only valuable if they're similar to my situation. This tool features case studies in all climatic regions of the country and in all community types. And in a moment, we're going to delve into what's maybe most unique about the guide, the ability to customize all the information most relevant to you and organize it in a report specific for your community. But before we jump into that, I'd like to share a short video that highlights the features of the guide. Okay, so that gives a good overview of the website itself, and now we're going to get into a little bit more discussion on the document builder. So I'll give me one more slide. There we go. So here are 3 reasons we think building a document customized to your community is beneficial. So we've designed the document builder feature of this site, hoping that you agree with that. There are 2 audiences for the feature. The first audience, of course, is you, whether you're a community planner, a park planner, an arborist, or a public works exec. The document builder will help you explore how well your community uses trees, not just green infrastructure, but green infrastructure including trees to manage stormwater and deliver the full range of benefits that come along with trees, from public health to energy conservation to economic development. The second audience are those folks whose buy-in is necessary to make an aggressive urban forestry program part of stormwater management on public land like parks as well as private land. You'll be able to compile a document which can persuade and hopefully convince them to join in. And I want to note that our survey and focus group research affirms that aligning municipal departments is one of the biggest challenges in promoting more and better urban forestry. So one of the benefits of using the document builder is that you can produce literally a persuasive document accessible to your colleagues, other departments, as well as policymakers. To set up your document, you'll respond to a series of questions. There are approximately 40 queries. Almost all of them are multiple choice. And responding to each accordingly, in pretest, users reported that completion took about 20 minutes to do. And you want to note that most of the queries, they're not department or function specific. So reaching out to other departments and doing some level of legwork will probably be required for most folks as the document is built. So here we have an example of what the document page might look like. Sections explore urban forestry in your community, from assessment and planning to policies, ordinances and protocols to maintenance and risk management. And the intent here is to help you create a document that can both inform and persuade, because urban forestry in all its forms is a team effort, and each community has to recruit its own players. Now, the iTree tools that are within the guide, they provide graphic evidence of the value of your trees can deliver in your community or any segment of it, and that data can be downloaded and incorporated into the document builder. So once you've completed your document and downloaded it, the sections can be rearranged and the document edited for specific audiences and customizing it as you deem appropriate. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Jenny to share with you. And actually, I think it's probably going to go back to Anna so to give a little introduction, and then you'll hear from Jenny to give more details on the information case study examples that you'll find in the tool as you use it. Anna?
Thank you, David. Now, so lastly, we have Jennifer Gulick, Senior Consulting Urban Forester for the Davie Resource Group. Jennifer is responsible for assisting clients to develop and implement urban forestry, park management, and tree preservation projects. She has broad experience in developing urban forest management and master plans, storm response and recovery plans, and expertise in municipal budgeting, staff management, and contract administration. She's an International Society of Arboricultural Certified Arborist and Municipal Specialist, and a Certified Forester through the Society of American Foresters. So now we'll hear from Jennifer and then move to Q&A. Take it away, Jennifer.
Thanks, Anna. David introduced you to the project and the website real briefly, but now I'm going to show you some real-world, local, and regional projects that have incorporated trees in their stormwater projects. And I'm going to show you some ways that you can do the same without even lifting a shovel. And you don't have to plant trees to get the stormwater benefits that they provide. Well, you know what they say, you can't fight Mother Nature. So we say, work with it instead. Nothing's more natural than trees, and if we recognize that fact, we can harness the power that they have to mitigate much of our stormwater issues and improve our communities in other ways. All you got to do is look around and see how Mother Nature's been designing stormwater management systems, and you'll get the idea pretty quickly. In terms of water quality, trees and forests improve stream quality and watershed health primarily by decreasing the amount of stormwater runoff and pollutants that reach the local waters. Tree roots and leaf litter create soil conditions that promote the infiltration of rainwater into the soil. And trees and forests reduce pollutants by taking up nutrients and other pollutants from soils and waters through their roots and by transforming pollutants into less harmful substances. In terms of water quality, trees and forests reduce stormwater runoff by capturing and storing rainfall in the canopy and by releasing water in the atmosphere through evapotranspiration. The presence of trees in a community also helps slow down and temporarily store runoff, which further promotes infiltration and decreases flooding and erosion downstream. Now, admittedly, in general, trees are most effective at reducing runoff from the smaller, more frequent storms. So on the website, in the guide, there are, as David mentioned, the iTree tools. And the iTree tools are rigorous peer-reviewed research on trees' impacts on stormwater. And what the U.S. Forest Service has done has amassed and synthesized and made readily available to everybody these tools through a user-friendly suite of tree cost and benefit tools that they call iTree. So using
Let me
the
interrupt
variety.
you for a quick second, Jennifer.
Sure.
On your screen showing the menu, if you can fix that a little bit.
The menu?
If you could maybe minimize the toolbox.
There we go.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
All right, great. Sorry about that. So using the variety of iTree applications, you can build scenarios and play what if, like to show the value of including trees in your stormwater management projects. This is an example of what Washington, D.C. did for their urban forest. So with iTree, you can calculate stormwater benefits for 1 tree or 10 trees or even 10,000 trees. iTree has produced some customized analyses for every ecosystem region in the country. And the stormwater benefits are the most compelling when you look at all the benefits and the quantity and the value of those benefits. Millions of gallons of stormwater are avoided in the U.S. cities because of trees. And those are dollars and gallons every year. So we can, in fact, quantify and place monetary value on trees' impact for stormwater management. So the good news is we can use all this information and reap these stormwater mitigation benefits, but we can also reap a whole bunch of other benefits of trees if we just plan for it. So the guide that we developed is a one-stop shop for anybody who wants to explore or start using trees to complement your community goals. If you need inspiration or justification to even consider incorporating trees into your plans and projects, the resource section of the guide should have everything you need, from scientific studies to case studies that have put the science to practice. So I'm going to walk you through it briefly and show you and point out some highlights. So this resource guide is found here. This is the tab when you get into the guide, and it is chock full of over 300 resources, and they have been organized for you by category and type for your convenience. So for instance, you may be interested in the case studies and stormwater impacts. So we have those all arranged and organized in that category. You may be more interested to browse project design and the co-benefits of trees. And so those have been arranged for you in these, like that. The research has shown that trees support better public health, and I think everybody kind of gets that they produce oxygen and they clean the air. But it is poor air and water quality and heat-stressed environments and poor diet coupled with low activity levels that have created public health problems in cities across our country. And science has shown that trees mitigate these urban problems. And the science for this particular co-benefit is found in the resource guide. You can find case studies and the studies themselves to show how trees improve air quality and better water quality and mental health, all to support public health. Another co-benefit that trees that research has supported is revitalization of neighborhoods and improving the quality of life in communities. Trees can absorb, and they do this in a number of ways. Trees can absorb dust and noise and provide shade and lower ambient temperatures, which makes the built environment for humans better. Conventional wisdom has that trees and vegetation would have a negative effect on crime due to the cover it provides for criminal activity. However, studies have shown that tree-lined streets actually have been linked to lower crime. So while low, dense brush was associated with crime, tall, broad canopies were associated with a decrease in crime. And another study that you can find in the guide showed that residents of apartment buildings surrounded by trees reported knowing their neighbors better, socializing with them more often, having stronger connections to the community, and feeling safer and better than residents of barren but otherwise identical areas. Economic development and business district success in most cities is a driver of projects and a way to gauge if the community is successful. And trees support successful business districts. In multiple studies, they've shown consumers are willing to pay 11% more for goods in tree-lined business districts, and they shop for longer periods of time in shaded business districts. They also, believe it or not, consumers felt that the products were better, the quality of the products were better in business districts when they were surrounded by trees. Due to the urban heat island effect, built-up urban areas without trees often experiences temperatures up to 25 degrees hotter than nearby less developed areas. Heat stress has been proven to cause significant public health problems and even mortality. In fact, every year, more Americans die from extreme heat than all other natural disasters combined. That's hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, and lightning. And those over 65 and under age 5 are especially vulnerable to these heat-related problems. So the beauty of using trees among all your stormwater management tools are the co-benefits they provide. Trees are one component of municipal infrastructure that multiple and varied departments, and even the citizens themselves, can all support despite varied missions. And as Mike mentioned, trees give you at least a triple bottom line when you use them in your stormwater management programs. So the science is rife with data about tree benefits for stormwater management and the huge variety of co-benefits. So now we need to practice what we preach. So I know this is not breaking news, but agencies across the country have used trees, not just shrubs, perennials, and grasses, in a variety of green infrastructure projects, and the benefits of doing so are gaining ground. So next, I want to briefly show you some examples of tree-centric stormwater solutions and case studies that hopefully resonate with you, and I think some of them might even surprise you. If you've ever been to Cincinnati or have just passed through it, then you might have seen this green infrastructure project. This area is a typical interstate right-of-way with crappy soil and impervious road surfaces and steep topography. And all the stormwater from this watershed goes right into the Ohio River. So the Sanitation District Number 1 is the controlling regional stormwater and sewer authority there, and they had their hands full with this management area. It's called Willow Run, and Willow Run's CSO annual volume is like over 500 million gallons and accounts for 29% of the total of SD1 overflows. And it was just in this small, relatively small drainage area. So being proactive and an early adopter of green infrastructure solutions in the Northern Kentucky area, Sanitation District Number 1 and their consultants designed an extensive stormwater management project where trees were a critical element. What the project did was create a series of berms and trenches supplemented with engineered soils and native trees on the steep hillsides adjacent to the interstate right-of-way. At the completion of the project, 8 acres of trees stand where there used to only be grass and eroded hillsides, and the difference in the land cover is dramatic. This was the tree cover before, and now the tree canopy covers this much. And this highly visible project is still functioning and going strong today. Another project in the Cincinnati area is the Lick Run Watershed, and this watershed covers about 3,000 acres on Cincinnati's west side. And every year, about 500 million gallons of sewage mixed with stormwater overflow from this watershed through CSO outfall into the Mill Creek, which goes into the Ohio River. So the Lick Run project, which is currently under construction, is planned to eliminate nearly 400 million gallons of CSOs annually. And the focus of this project is to keep the stormwater out of the combined sewer system through a variety of gray and green infrastructure projects across the watershed. So it will include new sewers, but it will be complemented with trees along the creation of a mile-long constructed waterway that's going to mimic a natural stream. And this project also recognizes and plans to harness the power of trees' co-benefits in terms of public health and economic development and increased property values. If you want more information about using trees in stormwater projects, particularly for redevelopment projects in dense urban areas, I want to remind you or make you aware of this EPA publication, and it is in the resource library in the guide. It has examples of techniques to accommodate development and trees, and itself is all full of chock full of case studies. So I guess my point is, if you want to know more, if you want to influence people you work with, then there are many educational resources in the guide, as well as real-world, local, and regional examples of successful projects, initiatives, and regulations that incorporate trees into stormwater management programs. I think I mentioned before that there are ways you can incorporate trees into your stormwater management program without even lifting a shovel, and this is one of them. Nobody likes more rules and regulations and ordinances, but sometimes that's the only way to ensure that trees are protected and the co-benefits for the community are guaranteed. So one way to do this without lifting a shovel is to strengthen your tree ordinances and your zoning codes, like Pittsburgh is. Pittsburgh's Public Works Department and its Planning Department are presenting City Council with a revised tree ordinance and updated land development regulations where stormwater management is an express goal. What they're going to do is codify minimum urban tree canopy percentages per land use, since they know that existing mature trees are already providing valuable green infrastructure services and benefits that will take years to replace if the trees are allowed to be removed during the land development process. Setting such minimum canopy standards per land use has been adopted and enforced by Fairfax County, Virginia, Arlington, Virginia, Prince George County, Maryland, Fort Worth, Texas, Mooresville, North Carolina, and several counties in Georgia. So the precedent has been set, and all we have to do is follow suit if it's right for our communities. I am already talked about that. I'm going to show you another case study that recognizes that size matters. It's the large trees, the large canopy trees that we really need to focus on, as well as planting new trees, because those large trees are already providing the vast majority of the stormwater benefits in our communities. So in Northern Kentucky, the Planning and Development Services is the planning agency for 2 counties and many municipalities. So they recognize the power of trees for stormwater management and undertook a proactive project to identify areas where existing trees were providing the most stormwater benefits in a large watershed in their jurisdiction. With this information, land development projects and the effects on trees and stormwater could be evaluated quickly and easily. So what they did was really a kind of a simple project. It was a GIS exercise, and it was a classification prioritization scheme, and that looked at these factors: forest cover, floodplain, steep slopes, riparian corridor, and impervious surfaces. And they looked at where all those layers intersected. And where the most intersections were, that was where there was critical tree cover in terms of stormwater management. So the end result was this map. It's prioritized, and it shows where the critical forests are performing the functions for stormwater management. And it can be used to inform and guide land development in the watersheds. So trees and forests can now be part of the discussion right from the start of any land development project. In effect, all forested land in this watershed provides benefits. But of all the total forest cover in the watershed, the planning people now know that 15% are providing the most benefits. So when planning roads and utility corridor expansion and new commercial and residential development, everybody knows which areas to avoid. Urban forest master plans are another tool that you don't have to dig a tree and plant a tree. Whether it's a section or an addendum to the city's comp plan, or it's a standalone plan, urban forest management plans specifically look at the natural resource and the community's other resources to provide a professional roadmap for preserving and enhancing the urban tree cover. We have examples of these documents and plans in the guide for you as well. So just to summarize why trees should be in your stormwater management toolbox, because I like to think of trees as the Swiss Army knife of the community's natural resources. No other tool is so versatile, which means we can use trees to mitigate or solve a wide variety of community problems and achieve community goals. So when stormwater managers and urban planners or sustainability staff come to urban foresters and say, we need a tool for stormwater runoff, well, we can say, great, we've got a tree for that. Or if we need to improve air quality, we can say, yep, there's a tree for that. Or improve real estate value or conserve energy. There are trees for all these co-benefits. And then inevitably they're like, well, that's great, but how do we pay for that? How can we afford this? And then we can say the trees are cost effective because they do so many good things at the same time. And that goes back to that triple bottom line concept. So as we foresters like to say, trees are the answer. But the guide and all its tools and information is a powerful resource that can help educate you and help you educate others about the value of trees to mitigate stormwater issues of quantity and quality, and provide the many benefits to the community. So I am now going to turn this back to Cameron and Anna, and I think we have a little bit of time for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. We're going to run just a little bit over time, just by a few minutes, so that we have time to answer some of these great questions that are coming in. Just as a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please do so by selecting the raise your hand button on your control panel or by typing a question in the questions box. Okay, Cameron.
So we have a few questions. Our first one is, what are some major quantifiable values for reporting the cost benefit of using trees for stormwater?
I'm sorry, what is that?
What are some major quantifiable values for reporting the cost benefit of using trees for stormwater?
Well, the iTree tools are what primarily we're using to show the value of trees and stormwater. There's actually an iTree tool, an application called iTree Hydro. And iTree Hydro works along with the engineering formulas and calculations for stormwater runoff and can calculate the avoided runoff, which then with local inputs on the value of that, you know, the cost to build a gray infrastructure, can get you some actual local hard data and values for trees and stormwater. You can go on to iTree Tools, and there are examples, and it's also in the guide, in the resource section. There are examples of reports, iTree reports that have been run showing the benefits of trees and of dollar values for every co-benefit, including stormwater management.
Thanks, Jenny. Our next question is, how does salt runoff affect the trees in rain garden areas?
It does affect them. And so most of the rain garden manuals that I've seen, and if anyone consults with their a local arborist, we can find salt-tolerant tree species that will work in your climate. And then those are the ones that should be put in the rain gardens. And conversely, we've been working with public works departments so that they are not using as much salt or using different de-icing chemicals that aren't as harmful to trees, so that you can use salt intolerant species in those as well.
Thanks, Jenny. So our next question, about ROI for urban forestry. Any idea of the cost demand for starter fertilizer, 10-10-10 per acre, to develop a real ROI?
And just so you know, remember, any of you speakers can chime in on answering these questions.
I'm not sure. So the question might be in trying to determine a accurate ROI on trees. Is the question, how do you take into consideration the inputs of, you know, the fertilizer costs and beyond the plant cost and labor costs? Is that, do you think that's the question?
I'm not sure. I think we can just skip that one. What does it take to seek a variance to encroach upon and within a stream setback area, and have any variances been granted? I think that's from Mike. Make sure you're not on mute.
Yeah, to my knowledge, and so this is 2010 when I had left the city. So to my knowledge, there have not been variances granted. However, there are activities that happen as part of development that have to be mitigated. And so if you're putting in water lines, utilities, things that have to go through or across those buffer areas, then we ask, that they're replanted or mitigated somewhere else within that same stream corridor area. The middle zone, which is inclusive of the floodplain, is generally hands off from any kind of structure. However, we do accommodate trails and things of that nature that are maybe even passive or active recreation, soccer fields, or something that's in keeping with the intent of that middle corridor.
And this is Seth. This is Seth Brown. I wanted to mention that I know Jenny had talked about Fairfax County, Virginia, as being an active community in this area. I've done work there, and I know that, just like Mike said, that there's exemptions for working within these buffered areas and protected areas for things like if you've got, some kind of utility that's needed, water wells, something like that, or as you said, access paths, historic preservation, or archaeological activities, things like that. So beyond that, those are the most straightforward exceptions and exemptions that we see in this area, at least.
I might add to that for Lenexa and many programs, there are also other available tools where you could say, for instance, if the city wanted to own that corridor, not just easements when it's dedicated, for fee simple, we would work with the developer to maybe offer them a density bonus for the dedication. So what you would call a transfer of development rights scenario, where you give us X acres and we will think about a higher density area for your residential. So there's some credits and bonuses that can be worked with in the system.
Thanks, Seth and Mike. Okay, David, this you can probably answer this. Is there much data and resources available for the Pacific Northwest region on the treesandStormwater.org site? I know from looking at the site and doing a lot of work on it, there is a decent amount of resources. David, you may know more.
I'm just going to reaffirm what you just said, Cameron. I can't say off the top of my head how many there are, but we know that we worked really hard, and that's thanks to Davey Resources and Centerline Strategies, Jenny and Larry, for collecting those resources. But there are quite a few for the Pacific Northwest. I do know that.
Yeah, and the whole site is applicable to all the different climate zones or regions in the United States. So if you're wondering about any other regions, definitely check out the site, because I know that we have resources for every region. Our last question: in central and western Oklahoma, where rain events are infrequent but powerful when they occur, people often claim that the streams used to hold water. The streams used to hold water longer. They blame this on trees guzzling water. They think that trees are the reason their streams run dry. How do we combat this misconception?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope it's not a widespread misconception.
I think there are tree species though that are non-native that are in a lot of waterways out in the southwest, south central area. But I know there's aggressive programs trying to deal with that particular situation because there is, to some extent, some truth in the base flow, low flow streams with those particular species in them. But otherwise, I think they're part of the system of maintaining the balance of water and groundwater in your stream bank area.
Those are legitimate concerns, I think, within that, and that's part of even the guidance within the trees and stormwater guide is picking the right tree for the right location, the right climate. That desert Southwest, you don't want a tree that you're going to have to spend a lot of time and money watering when it's not raining to keep it alive. That you need to pick the appropriate things. But I think from the other side of those conversations is looking at what's there naturally. So what trees were growing along those streams within that particular habitat, and those are, picking those native species for that. If it's a natural area, when you're talking about a very urbanized area or putting trees into that type of urban environment, and your big purpose is for stormwater management, you're putting it in a rain garden, having a tree that sucks up a lot of water is a good thing within that, and it will also, through evapotranspiration and the shade and all of that, will help to reduce evaporation issues by reducing that temperature and helping to make that climate more pleasant, that microclimate. So those are, it comes down to education on those aspects of really being able to talk to folks who may have that misconception and point out the ways that they are working and how trees actually do help within those streams by providing shade, especially when they're running, which is critical for habitat for fish and bugs.
All right, thank you guys for joining us today. Remember to check out the guide at treesandstormwater.com. We're still in beta mode, so please send us any suggestions if you find them. You'll want to send them to David or Cameron. Their email addresses are on the screen in front of you. Also, you'll receive an email within the next 24 hours. That will give you a link to the video of today's presentation and other resources. Thank you for your attendance, and we look forward to your participation on future webinars. Sorry, I said treesandstormwater.com earlier. It's actually treesandstormwater.org. With that, have a wonderful day and a great holiday season. Bye-bye.